It is still 6:03 p.m. on Tuesday, November 19th, 2024. The Board of Commissioners of the Hardwick Electric Department is meeting. Commissioner Demers and Commissioner Koch and Gedegan are present in the room, and Commissioner Prevo is connected via Zoom. Scott Johnston is here. Beth Essery is here. And Nolan is here. From the public, we have Eric Remick and
Heather Darcy from Dockside.
Okay. Are there any modifications to the agenda?
We'd like you to add, let's say, after approval of the line of credit to, which will be a slightly modified wording, but we'd like you to add action on the Vermont Transco agreement. Thank you.
Anything else? Everyone okay with the modifications? All right, first item is approval of the minutes from our last meetings.
We've got two of them.
We have,
We've got a special.
Yeah.
Yep.
We had a meeting on October 21st. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve. Second.
Any discussion? The only comment that I have is in the second bullet, the last line, Reno's name is misspelled.
That's my fault, that's just for the record. That's a me problem.
It should be an E, not an A. I think, right here, DEMERS, right?
Yes.
Okay,
All in favor? Okay, minutes are approved. Then we have minutes from the special meeting on November 5th. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
I second, any discussion? Roger, any discussion on those? All in favor? You actually can't vote because you're not here. That's okay.
should have one abstention then.
No, it's not an abstention, he's just not
That's fine.
voting,
That's fine.
I mean, because he can't,
So I would be, however you want to do it.
I mean, I don't know how someone can vote on approving minutes for a meeting that they weren't at. I don't know, is that an abstention? You're probably more expert on this than I am.
As select board, people usually abstain, but
Okay.
whatever,
Doesn't matter, the minutes are approved.
right?
Okay,
Oh, hang on a second, Beth, would you admit the person? Like, it looks like it's Mike. I think. You have to.
it says, yes, as Michael entered.
Yep. Thanks, sorry for stopping you.
Oh, that's, I'm glad you saw that. Let's
Just
just,
connecting, give him a second.
it's still connecting.
Maybe you have a connection problem, so you should keep. Oh, here he is.
Good evening.
Evening. Okay, so Commissioner Brusino has joined the meeting also via Zoom. So the next item on the agenda is the appointment of a general manager.
You have public comment?
What?
You skipped public comment.
Speak public comment.
Sorry.
No, you're right, you're right.
So I didn't come to make any comment, I came just to observe, but I will, since you asked. Just coming from me personally, I was in the front seat coffee the other day, looking out at the diner parking lot, the far end of that. Noticing there are some spots, parallel parking spots that extend towards Wolcott. The last one maybe isn't too far out of line with some overhead power lines that look like they have 3 lines, so maybe it's 3-phase, I don't know. Just was wondering, I'm like, I wonder if that would be a place for a EV charger at some point. Anyway, there's my comment. Carry on.
Thank you. Take a look at that.
I don't know how.
If it's that close to the power line, it makes me wonder about whether there should be a parking spot there actually.
3 phases is good
That
if you want to put in know,
No, I understand
Yeah,
the
it's
proximity
Yep.
to the line, I'm just, if there's a pole or something that may,
right there.
or that someone
Also, landings a little.
could.
Park on the other side of that. You make the math work.
Okay. So the next item on the agenda is the appointment of a general manager. I think I'll make the motion. I move that we appoint Sarah Brace beginning on January 6th, 2025 as our general manager. Is there a second?
Second.
I second.
Any,
The only thing I would say is we have successfully negotiated the contract. Beth can send it around for signature. It represents what you all have talked about. I did check one small modification about vacation approval with your chair. So the contract is as you described to me and I've seen before, so, but Beth has it, it'll go around for signature. Roger came in and signed it earlier, no, he wasn't going to be here, so. I
okay,
just wanted you to be aware, if you vote yes, we have a contract to sign.
We can hold on signatures till the end of June.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that.
okay.
Yep.
Is there any discussion?
And Sarah.
And Sarah is here, would have been introducing her.
I don't know that she wants to say anything, because as I told you, she's feeling
Yeah.
terribly unwell, but she wanted to be here, and so Sarah, if you wanna say something, go ahead, but if you don't want to, feel free to be quiet.
Just that I'm very grateful for the opportunity and look forward to working with you all. Thank you. Wish I was there in person.
We wish you were too, we wish you feel better. There's a, Eric,
I'd say congratulations.
oh, yeah, we're
To
gonna vote.
everybody.
Now you should go, yeah.
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 All in favor?
Aye.
Sarah, congratulations.
It was unanimous, Sarah, you didn't see that.
Thank you
That's
very
official.
much. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric, to you and everybody for participating in all the interviews.
Very happy to
Appreciate
be,
it.
happy to be included.
Yep.
And yeah, great, it's very exciting,
And just to note, because of the way things, the confidentiality and therefore the way things had to unfold, we skipped over the usual practice of having Sarah spend time doing what we'd call a confirmatory interview with all this, at least the office staff and the key people from the field. So Sarah, you'll have to think about, as you feel better and are on the mend, sort of how you want to do a substitute for that so that they feel like they're part of your onboarding, if you know what I mean. It's always I think a nice touch. I don't know if there's a way to do that. I don't know if there's a way to, somebody else might have a creative approach. Scott, you usually have good ideas of just
Yep.
for the team to feel like they're not just getting the public announcement, they're getting a private.
Yep. We're having the staff meeting Friday, Roger, already. Sarah may or may not be able to come to that, depending on how she's feeling, but either way, we're planning to talk
Yeah,
about
maybe
it.
there's a way you can do it, Scott,
Yep.
with people to give them that personal touch.
I think there's a good chance that it'll be in the Gazette tomorrow. I mean, things tend to show up there fairly quickly.
Yep. That's probably right.
So it might be good if
Yep, no,
there's something that goes out to staff and letting people know that it was because of confidentiality that,
we'll
Yeah.
handle, that's not a problem. They'll know in plenty of time and it will work fine. I believe staff will be fine. So I think the fact that she's local will deal with 99.9% of anybody's concern, because you know, you have somebody that actually knows the area, and that
Yep.
usually goes a long way.
Yep.
So,
That's great.
uh,
And I'm all full of suggestions. Of the other suggestion that I think's really key is to not let Scott off the hook entirely. You know, we could, if we wanted to, say, okay, thanks, Scott. Never see you again. But if, if you and Sarah can come up with an approach
Yep.
where she's got not only the support of the commissioners, but she's got your support as somebody who's really seasoned and experienced and seen a lot of what she'll be running into and can be a coach for her, because all of us as commissioners want to be supportive to her, but you can be supportive in a whole different way.
Yep, she and I started that conversation, and I know Ken well enough to know, sitting in the audience, well, he's gonna miss her at VEPSA. He also sees it as his purpose to not let GMs fail, so, he's been a mentor for her, and I feel entirely comfortable saying on his behalf that he's gonna be there for her too, in addition to me, so, but don't worry, Sarah and I already started talking about, what that all looks like.
And Sarah, while Scott's been interim, he's given us advice on everything you can imagine. He's really done a huge amount, more than your part-time interim in any organization's probably ever done. And he hasn't given us any bad advice, I don't think. So he's got 100% batting average. So if you go to him for advice, I'm betting that it'll be good advice.
Very much looking forward to having that sounding board, but I agree. And to your point about staff, that is a key priority as well for me in the coming weeks before the official start, because I do feel like that is an incredibly important element of starting with Hardwick.
Right.
Sure.
Okay.
You had one more?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, I would like to move that we appoint Sarah Brace as our representative to the board of the Vermont Public Power Supply Authority, effective beginning on January 6th, 2025.
Second.
Any discussion?
The only thing I would say in the discussion is keep in mind going forward at some point, that you're entitled to have an alternate. So I don't think you've ever appointed one, and some don't. Some, and Beth would hate me saying this, some will appoint their controller, because there's often committees that deal with some appointment clarity. There's a wide variety of types of people.
If y'all want me to, I will.
But I just wanted you to know that it's available to you, and that's what encourages it for sure. You don't have to do that tonight. That's not the point. I just want to make sure you know that everybody is entitled to having an alternate.
What does Morris go do?
We have Penny Jones, which is her peer, as our alternate, and she participates almost every meeting just to hear what's going on, because then all the finance people talk too, as part of that. So, you don't have to do anything tonight. That's not the point. I just want to make sure you're aware of that.
Okay, yeah, it's good to know.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? All in favor? The motion carries.
That was unanimous, Sarah, on both counts. Now you're in for it.
Yeah, I think Sarah's relationship with Ken just changed.
In a good way, right?
Board's getting a little strange for me right now. It's all good.
That's good.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is a letter of credit with People's Trust Company of St. Albans.
A little different approach than last time, and Beth's gonna describe to you what she has, include, I'll shut up, I'm gonna let Beth describe what she has.
So, Lynn and Eli and I and Scott, we had a phone call last week because the documents that we received from People's Trust were not appropriate for our type of structure. So in order to make sure we used a bank that knew the type of documents that were needed, we went to Union Bank, and Union Bank said, no problem. What we have decided to go with instead of a line of credit is still a current expense note, but it's not a line of credit. It is a note. It's for the same amount that we're going to get the line of credit, $300,000. We got the note late today that I emailed y'all. If y'all want a copy of it, we can get it for you. But Eli has reviewed the documents, he said they are appropriate, in fact, they are exactly like the documents that were approved back in May for the line of credit. The only difference is, this does not have one line that says this is a revolving credit. All the other documents are exactly the same according to Eli and according to Tina at Union.
And do that.
And Tina.
Okay, if this is not a line of credit, but a note, are we liable for the interest the day that we enter into it?
No,
Or, so it functions like a line of credit.
yes.
Was the issue that it not be, I mean, you can have a line of credit that's not revolving, I mean, so is.
Well, when I explained to talk to Tina about what we were actually looking, what it was for, she recommended that it not be a line of credit, it just be a note. And it actually works very similar to the line of credit.
And the collateral on that is still revenue?
Yes, it's it's mentioned in here.
Oh,
Yes.
so it's the same collateral as well?
Yes, yes.
She has to submit her cash flow document to them.
Okay.
Demonstrate we have the
And-
money to pay that.
And
And there's no rec that says that we don't have any security interests unless it says other than to them.
it is exactly the same note that was approved back in May.
Right, but I don't remember
Yeah.
what the rec was, that's. I could read those documents back, and in fact, I have them recently, but I don't have total what I wanna make sure is that by virtue of this being a second loan, that there isn't language in there that's technically problematic, that's all.
I did not see any language for
Okay.
that. I compared it to what was signed earlier as well. Back in May.
Just give me a second.
The interest rate is a little bit higher than what the other bank had offered us, but this allowed us, that they knew exactly what. Supply.
Yeah, no, I'm not questioning it. And this will need to go to the town.
Yes.
This
Oh,
will-
they'll be coming
Yeah,
up.
this is gonna be the same as structure as what we did back in May.
Okay. And Scott, you're coming with this?
Yep.
Okay, just checking.
Yep.
So is that on our agenda for Thursday?
I don't know, I don't think so, because we didn't know.
We just got the documents today.
We can add it if you want,
Wonderful, we can.
just if you can get an electronic copy to Casey or Opie to put in our folder before Thursday. Yeah, that'd be great.
Thanks.
So the difference in the 3%, if we had the money outstanding for a full year, would be what, $9,000 or something. Excellent.
So just as a reference for the motion that was made, which if you want to do a similar motion, that was what was passed back in May. You didn't read the whole thing, you just referred to the document.
Yeah, but this isn't in our work.
Right, I knew that part would
Yeah.
be different. But I was just saying that you referenced the document instead of reading straight from the document itself.
Yeah, I would really rather not read all of the, give me the document back. With a reference,
And the loan documents are gonna be attached to the minutes.
that's fine, I just need to find where the resolution is
Oh, okay.
in here. So that I can point to it. Not seeing it.
Oh. I don't know, there's something I can verbiage for the resolution in there.
Here it is, here it is,
Oh,
resolution
okay.
current expense borrowing, okay, I just took 2 pages at once.
Good.
Okay. All right, I move that we adopt. I'm gonna change that. I move that we enter into a current expense note with Union Bank as set forth in the documents attached to the minutes. And further move that we adopt the resolutions in the portion of the document entitled Town of Hardwick Electric Department Resolution Current Expense Borrowing that is in the packet of documents attached to the minutes. Is there a second? Sorry.
Second.
Discussion? I think I'll just say that as Beth noted, the documents, while the interest rate was attractive from People's Bank, it was, the documents did not work for us. They were just, there would have needed to be wholesale changes that it was extraordinarily unlikely that they would agree to, even that they had given us form documents that I think they just weren't used to dealing with municipal equity.
Since this is gonna come to the select board, what's this for? What's the purpose of it?
It's cash flow.
Okay,
It's not for construction.
it's not for a project.
It's not for a
just
specific
operating.
project, it's just that there's some timing issues
Yep.
potentially,
We'll have
and
one of those come to you next month. Projects, out the range and things like that.
Oh, yes. Yep.
So you'll have one of those on your next agenda, not this agenda.
Okay,
but this is just to manage cash.
got it.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah, passes. Thank you, Beth, and thank you for getting that all sorted.
This is where we had transcripts.
Yeah. I think Scott,
Yeah.
why don't you speak to
So
this?
a couple things have changed, but just, when I wrote the GM report, what I knew about this coming was that Velco had told Bepsa to tell us that this opportunity was coming, but we didn't have details yet. And I wrote what I wrote in the GM report, assuming you all knew all about this, but we should have been doing this every year. And then I found out that Beth had never heard of this before. And then I found out that this had never come to you before. So I made an assumption, which turned out to be faulty, that you've never participated. As a flyer, because I thought, well, I didn't check the box, I checked in with the CFO or finance director, whatever her title was at EPSA, and said, just to confirm, like, has Hardwick not been participating in the Vermont Transco equity round? And she said, oh, no, and she sent me a sheet, most years you have participated.
I thought we did.
Yeah, and so you did. I'm not quite sure how, because my view is this is it's not you're not doing it in the form of a loan to Vermont Transco. You're obligated to repayment of a loan to VEPSA. So it's at least a tangential borrowing. I don't think most GMs would ever sign those without talking to their board. But that's how it happened here.
Yeah.
So it's a little different than what I wrote in the supplemental memo, because I had it a little bit wrong. And I think it's good because at least we've been not losing the opportunity. Essentially, and Ken can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'd say the Cliff Notes version is, Velco through Vermont Transco gets their capital raised by all the utilities in the state. And because of FERC rules, you get a guaranteed rate of return, which is usually in the 11 or 12% range. That number's probably slightly off. And then we all borrow at whatever the current rates are, sometimes as low as 2 or 3%, sometimes as high as 5%-ish, and you earn the difference over time. And then most people put that back into either their operating budgets, or in Morrisville, we put it into our distribution capital budgets and whatever the net is. And once we paid off the note, we put it all into there. So it's like, it's the one part of society where arbitrage is still legal. Honestly, it's been run out of the rest of the world, and it's kind of probably too quaint to call it a free money machine, but it kind of is. It doesn't mean there's no risk in the world, but it kind of is. And so This is the biggest round, I think, that I'm aware of that Velco's, if Vermont Transco's ever called for. That's the difference. This is like a 10x round. They're getting all the money that they need between now and 2029, I think it is, which is $150 million. And they're raising that at once. And so the number's bigger, so it feels bigger, particularly if you guys haven't participated in the decisions in the past. I don't think the outcome should be any different. I just see it as a better opportunity to bring more money in. And we want to make sure that we give VEPSA enough time. They're recommending that we make clear that while we're in, that the actual delivery of the money is sometime in the next 3 years, so that they can work the interest rates and play the market to when our interest is lower, so that we net more money. Is essentially the way we're talking about doing this. The only other piece is to understand if some utility opts out. I don't know why any utility would, but some do. And then those get distributed pro rata for anyone that wants them among the rest of the utilities that sign up to take more. From my perspective, at the rate that these usually come in at, which is 150 grand for a utility like this at the time, I always tell Morrisville, like, take whatever you can get. Like, it's kind of crazy. If the only danger in signing that box of we'll take whatever there is if everybody else says no, and GMP doesn't want more, you'd be taking on $150 million. I don't think you want that. So I always think you need to check the box that says yes, but up to a cap of another $1 million. Like some number like that I don't know what number that number should be. Kind of depends on your risk tolerance, but I kind of feel like you probably should put an upset limit on, because your number is 1,099,340. So you could almost say not to exceed our call or whatever, however you want to do that, whatever your tolerance is. And I don't know if other members are grappling with that question. I would think you'd get uncomfortable if all of a sudden you check the box, will take it all, and they say, oh, well, you got 15 million. I would think for a small utility that would feel uncomfortable, even though it's still a great opportunity, right? So you can make an argument, what a great opportunity, let's do it. But and I don't think that's gonna happen because GMP is not gonna sink them. They're owned by investment capital, right? So if they have an opportunity to make free money, they're gonna make free money. But when I said at the top, there's not a lot of risk. On this piece, the way it's designed, you could put yourself at risk, I think, and if you disagree with that, please speak up. You know more about this than me.
Yeah, I think it's cascading down, right? So GMP is roughly 72% of the capital. So Velco doesn't issue these unless they know GMP is gonna opt in. Could be VEC or Burlington, we've already confirmed they're both gonna take, actually Burlington's planning to use VEPSA to borrow the money for them. So you're down to possibly Stowe or Hyde Park opting out.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's a huge risk there, but Scott's right, you probably want to put a number in that you're comfortable with, because you never know what can happen.
The question that I had in reading through the documents is, in terms of the loan, what's the tenor that you're looking at? How over what period of time do we pay it back versus when does the cash flow start coming in?
So the way this works, to Scott's point, historically, Velco's asked for 20 or 30 million. So VEPSA's share was, for VEPSA the total was 1 to 2 million. And we've been able to raise that money through local banks. We tend to do a 10, I think the last round interest rates were very high, so we did a 15-year to get a positive cash flow. In this case, we're talking about having to raise 20 million for the group as a total. That's bigger than any local bank can handle. So we actually had a call earlier this week with our bond counsel. The reason we're suggesting waiting 3 years or putting in that you can defer for 3 years is because we're going to be putting an actual bond issuance together. We're bringing the consultants in now to figure out what that looks like. So I can't really tell you what the term, but we're gonna try to figure out what's the right maturity. We're good, we shoot for 10 or 15 years,
Okay.
we can do that.
But you try to keep a cash flow positive even while we're paying, we still get a little surplus, so we get enough coming in to pay our obligation of EPSA plus some, is how you usually try to design that.
So,
Where I'm coming from in this question, maybe that makes it easier to, is trying to sort of figure out what's the worst thing that could happen.
so,
You know, so what's our annual exposure and is that something that we can tolerate if nothing comes in?
so. The way mechanically, the way these tend to get set up is when you sign a subscription form to Velco, saying, yes, we want our equity. There's a box on there to say you want it assigned to VEPSA. So when Velco issues the membership unit, it's actually given to us instead of going to Hardwick. We pledge the shares and the dividends to pay the loan. So typically, the Velco dividends go into a bank account that is set up specifically to pay the loan back. The bondholders of the bank will take the money out of that, and then whatever's left in there gets distributed to the members. So cash flow wise, you're in no different position. The dividends are coming from Velco into the bank account to the bondholders, and then whatever's left comes to you as a revenue. Your risk is if Velco defaults. And if Velco defaults, we got a bigger problem.
No, and I realize that there's a huge problem, but I'm just, because I think this makes a tremendous amount of sense, so but. If it's a 10-year bond. And Velco defaults early on. So the annual principal, just back of the envelope, is 200,000. If we said, this is our worst case, we cap it at 2 million and we wind up taking 2 million.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And if it's 10 years, then that's 200,000 principal.
Correct.
Which wouldn't be a nice thing to eat, but it's not. It's not the end of it. It doesn't kill us. And it's extraordinarily unlikely, and as you point out, if they default, we have a big problem on the transmission.
Well, an intermediate issue before it even gets to you is the bond will be issued in VEPSA's name. So if we reach that point, the VEPSA board will have to be talking about how do we deal with this issue so that we don't cause problems for the authority. Which means we may be pulling on our fund balance to cover the debt service to figure out how we work this with everybody. So I think there's an interim cushion between Hardwick actually having to come up with the cash in a default situation. And that itself is extremely unlikely.
Yeah.
The only other potential risk I've ever come up with a number of times is, and there's no precedent for it, I can't fathom it ever happening. But if FERC ever decided to retroactively change the rate of return, which there's always been buzz that rate of return is too high and you shouldn't do it and blah, blah, blah. But most of the big utilities are owned by capital investment firms who think 11 or 12% is too low to start with. If they ever did change it, they would, I can't fathom them doing it retroactively, they would do it prospectively. So is there a risk there? Sure. Would it really, how big is the risk? I can't fathom it happening.
I can't tell you the specific instances, but my recollection is that for, not necessarily on transmission rates, but on rates, has reduced rates for return historically, that had to be refunded, but
It's just highly unlikely.
But I for this, I agree, I agree.
I'll say it out loud, because it is a true statement.
Again, I was not saying that any of this was likely, I just wanted to sort of get my head around and out there,
This is why this should come.
you know, what's the worst thing that could happen, and the worst thing that could happen is not that awful.
So conceptually, like a Velco default situation is catastrophic climate event and the state is turned upside down. Velco's not any transmission activity, so we're talking
Something like that.
catastrophe.
Yeah.
And bear in mind, I mean, Velco gets its revenue from the Vermont utilities.
Right.
Get their revenue through the retail rates, which are set by the Public Utility Commission, so you have to be in a situation where the Public Utility Commission refused to raise enough money to pay Velco to.
Well, and the risk is even less than that because the Public Utility Commission will have approved this transaction in the first place.
Correct.
And so they would then have to be denying utilities the ability to collect the revenue that they need to meet their obligations. In connection with it, so that also mitigates the risk considerably.
So then again, for argument's sake, we're capping. Because at a certain point, we don't like the feeling of the exposure in the catastrophe situation, what's the?
It just, to me, the reason I even raised it is it feels different.
Yeah.
Than when we're starting at 100,000 and the whole call was only 15 or 20 million, but it just feels different to me.
We're already at a big number, and to go again, I mean, I'm assuming that the deal just doesn't go full if Green Power says
Exactly.
no. But if Vermont Electric Co-op and WEC, let's both said, no, we're not gonna do it. And most everybody else said, no, we don't want to take our pro rata, share. We could be left with a big number in theory. And in theory, it could be a bigger number than what our annual revenue is. And it just feels too big. I mean, but it's not an analytic thing, but to me, that's expressing my view, to me.
On a call of this size, I would guess based on history, somebody will probably say no, because somebody always says no to everything. But you never might go from 1,099,000 to 175, 200 ish. That just historically, that's about right.
About the right ratio.
More than likely, so setting a $2 million total cap, the odds of you exceeding that or having the opportunity to exceed that are highly unlikely, I believe.
And if people are uncomfortable with that, then we can do something lower.
Or lower, whatever you.
What would you think of doing a cap that's just a little closer to where our proportionate share of something like 1.2 million?
Whatever you're comfortable with, that's why I usually give direct advice, but this is a matter of what's your comfort level.
In all honesty, the utility that historically has said no is still electric. And it's because they had a legal opinion from their council that said this was a borrowing that needed full voter approval. And they were, I mean, as Scott said, the timing comes out, we get like 3 weeks notice to turn around to you to give you a week or two. And still couldn't do a public vote in that time. So because of their attorney, it said, well, you don't have the legal authority. They just routinely voted no. That now they've changed attorneys and their opinions changed, so now they're ready to buy.
And we've taken our proportionate share just without commission approval in the past.
Correct.
What we learned?
Yep. Yep. Correct.
Maybe we break it into two people, well, I mean, how do people, Roger, you're saying you feel more comfortable at 1.2?
I've just proposed that as because we're going to use a cap anyway, why not make the cap, closer to our proportionate share? But I don't have a strong feeling. I definitely would like us to have a cap.
Yeah. And since I have is there anybody who isn't interested in the cap?
I like a cap of two. I love arbitrage. Unfortunately, it's gone, except for, we're lucky to have it here. I would say the cap should be 2 million.
Arbitrage, that's my word, probably not theirs, but.
No, it's arbitrage. I've used it in the past, 40 years ago.
I did too. I took a school loan and put it in Vanguard, no, in Fidelity.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. But I think 2 million is a reasonable cap. You know, it's a $200,000 exposure, maybe.
I'm fine.
You're okay with that, Roger?
Sure, yeah.
Reno?
Sounds great.
So the three working pieces are to vote to authorize that to be signed, to provide up to a 3-year window to enact, and so not to exceed the cap of 2 million. Yes,
And to transfer the shares to,
correct, that would be.
well, that was part of the documents.
Right.
I did not.
There's a box to sign of which way you can buy them yourself directly. Because BEPSA is a financing authority to start with, why would we? Because we also then run into caps of, if we keep it, there's a certain point at which you have enough debt services and electric utility that all further borrowing does then have to go to voters. So part of the reason they exist is to keep us from ever getting to that number.
Okay. Shall I go and make a motion? Let's see. I think I'm gonna do it in pieces.
However you want.
I move that we enter into the documents that were circulated to us in order to purchase our proportional share of the expected issuance by Transco, with a cap not to exceed shares with a value of $2 million. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. And what's the other?
It's the 3-year, how would that best be worded, Ken?
To deferral up to 3 years to acquire the shares.
Okay. I move that we agree to defer up to 3 years to acquire the shares in order to enable BEPSA to optimize borrowing. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. And the third bit?
You did that.
I did that in the first bit.
I think that's everything you need.
I know, we need, but the documents had, the tick the box for assigning the shares to BEPSA. So, yeah, so it's,
I'll just do that, but that's fine.
okay,
I know what you want to do with that. That part I'm comfortable doing on my own.
okay.
It probably will be 4 or 5 years before this happens again. Hopefully Sarah will still be here and it will come back to the commission and not be done by again.
And hopefully. Okay,
Thank you all for both for adding
no,
that.
thank you for bringing that to our attention and explaining it so. The next item on the agenda is power supply and battery discussion.
This came out of your meeting last time, where you had a series of questions, everything from how can we add nuclear power back into Vermont's portfolio to what are we gonna do when we got this 18-month period at least where we're not gonna have Wolcott Dam going, and how are we gonna control costs, and how do we get talking about batteries again, if that's gonna be the realm of today and tomorrow from a cost basis. And so that's what these people do for Hardwick Electric. So it was like, let's have them come talk. And you want to introduce Heather? I'm not sure they actually know what she does for you.
Sure. So that's Heather Darcy is our manager of power resources. If anything to do with ICE of New England, power procurement, Peak management, the battery conversation, I'm involved tangentially, but it's her department that actually manages the day-to-day. So I usually, when I come here, I get her in trouble. I say things and I go back to that. It's not quite right. But it's better to have her speak. I'm gonna try to say as little as possible and let Heather handle the conversations.
I do have just a quick presentation on your power supply. I don't know, I have handouts, but I don't know if you'd like me to plug in.
I'm afraid to have her unplug only because it's been so finicky for us, so I'm sorry, but. I presume you agree with that, Doc?
No touch.
Council President, seal that. Yep, thank you. So this is just a quick presentation about your power supply, just trying to think about what you might be interested.
Let me just check one thing, because you're talking this way. Mike or Roger, can you hear Heather okay?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. I'll check, go ahead.
So,
Is there any way that this could be emailed to them?
yes, I don't think I have their email.
Actually, or just maybe after the meetings. I don't know if they can get it in real time.
I would have to connect to the internet and then I would just need their email addresses. Is there a
There's a guest, there's.
yeah, I clicked on Hardwick guest.
Yeah.
I think
I think it's be my guest.
all lowercase or
Did I make that up? Did anybody else?
I'm on it, but I
it's
can't.
connected, that's very funny. Okay.
Literally just-
I'm amazed that came to me.
If you just want to send it to me, I'll forward it to them. Probably don't mind.
Yes,
Either one of mine is fine. If one pops up. What'd you do? Did you lose everybody? Open Zoom meeting.
Just died.
Okay. Thought we
We can
lost
still
you.
hear you. Yeah, we didn't lose.
No, we see you, we see you.
It's so sad to see Wolcott Hydro at zero. Twice. So you're expecting a year and a half?
Another year and a half.
I didn't really.
Yeah.
The penstock has to be redone.
Yep. A year fighting with FEMA and then 6 months to build it.
Yeah, right, no, you're right.
I got it, go ahead, just start and I'll get it forwarded to them.
so this first slide has actual information on it. It just shows the percent of your power supply per resource, and yes, Vulca is 0 for all of 2025 for calendar year 2025. Brookfield is almost 40%. That's that was a great contract. It was comparatively to current prices, it was very low. And it includes Vermont One RECs, which were priced low at the time compared to, or I guess average for today. And then some other resources that have been in your power supply for a while, NIPA, Fitchburg. You do have Stetson as well in there, which is a wind resource where we get Vermont One RECs. And then some of the smaller resources. further down, and all the different resources have different characteristics, whether they are tied to a particular generator, whether they're firm or intermittent. So that just kind of gives you a numerical view of what your power supply looks like. You go, or questions, I guess, on that.
Of power supplies baseload.
Well, Brookfield has an on and off peak component, so I'd say Brookfield, NYPA, Fitchburg. That's in Rygate. I would say the majority of it is baseload. The resources that are, I mean, McNeil, I don't know if I would consider that to be baseload at this point. They're not operating as consistently. When they do operate, they're operating throughout the day, but it's not as reliable. Billings Road is a solar, Chester is a solar, Standard Offer is mostly solar. Stony Brook and Project 10 are all both peakers, so majority is consider that to be mostly baseload. But Brookfield, like I said, that's got an on-peak and an off-peak component, so your percentages of those, or your megawatts for those. So the next slide is a visual representation of all of your different resources. It's a little bit harder to see the or know exactly which resources are which, because most of them are assumed to go beyond the time frame that we're looking at. This is from 2025 to 2032. The reason why I chose that time is because we are looking at we're going to be looking at a 5-year purchase from 2028 to 2032. So the green line at the top is your projected load. And as you can see, you're going to have a pretty significant gap coming in 2028, and that's because both Brookfield and Stetson, which if you go back, granted those entitlements to those change over the course of the years, but that's half of your power supply. So
This is energy, this is not capacity.
correct. So half of your volume expires at the end of 2027. And that's the same for, maybe not the same actual percentage of your resources, but that's the same for most of our members. So we're gonna be looking to do a purchase, and the 5 years is really just because that's the most we can do without needing to go through a more strenuous and complicated process. Questions about that?
Is there value in and you may be doing this, in staggering it so that it's not this kind of a cliff?
I think that's something that we could look at. I don't know. The value really depends on what the market is doing. If like, so for example, if we wanted to buy for you, like, okay, 2028 is around the corner, we've got to get you coverage for 2028, but we think prices are really high right now. We think that they're going to drop. We're just going to buy for 1 year or 2 years to make sure that you're covered. If you think that prices are going to increase, then it makes sense to buy for a longer period of time. If you want to minimize your risk, because there's only so much prices can drop, but prices could potentially increase quite a bit, you'd want to lock in for a longer period of time. One of the things that Ken and I had discussed was the last 2 major resources that we entered into were both bundled energy and recs. And one of those is Stetson, which is tied to Stetson wind. Because it's tied to wind, which is very intermittent, it tends to cause a lot of variance in actuals compared to budget. And what I have learned in doing this job is people don't like variance. So you wanna know what your costs are gonna be, you wanna make sure that, which is totally understandable, I wanna know what my personal costs are gonna be also. And then, you know, Brookfield is a great counterparty, they're excellent to work with. But they tend to price things higher than other entities. So it could save hundreds of thousands of dollars not working with Brookfield. And the reason why I mentioned Brookfield is they're the main counterparty that would do a bundled transaction. Brookfield also owns Stetson. So both of those resources are through that entity. There's the possibility that the renewable energy standard will be changed again. And you may, this is what Ken brought up to me when I proposed this to him, so you may want to elaborate, but there's the potential that it could be changed again to do to require something like a bundled energy purchase. And this is leverage for us to say, knowing that Vermont's a very liberal state, that this is likely, you know, if it comes up in the legislature, that the Democrats and the progressives are gonna wanna move that way, we can say, okay, but not until after 2032, because we have this contract in place. So it's a potential leverage for us. You could also potentially see it as a risk if you think that they would not allow us to hold off for that. So
How much of our power supply comes from out of state?
The majority. So the Brookfield contract, they own a number of hydros, so this is all hydropower, it's firm. But it's all hydropower in like Maine, Rhode Island. I don't know specific resources off the top of my head. I don't know whether they have many in Vermont.
More than 75%, like at a quick glance on her chart.
Yeah, a lot. So I guess I could just say that the in-state resources would be McNeil, Billings Road, Rygate, Standard Offer, Project 10, and Walken. Those are the resources that are in state.
And why do we think electric prices are gonna go down? Is that what you started by saying? You think electric prices might go down initially?
Well, electric prices are, as of right now, the forwards are dropping in the next few years. Not substantially, but they are dropping. So if we were to enter into a contract now, the current forward prices and that drop in prices would be accounted for in the PPA rate for the contract that we enter into. But we don't, you know, those are sometimes the forward prices match when the operating month rolls around. I would say 9 times out of 10 they don't. That's just the way that it works. And we do the best we can with the information that we have. But you know, we don't have a crystal ball, unfortunately.
I think if I could interject, like I think the wild card is the election outcome. So when Heather and I had this conversation, it was before the election. We've now got kind of countervailing politics at play. So ISO New England is in process, they're about to adopt changes to their wreck tracking system, which will allow it to occur hourly. Right now, they take a monthly generation and then they actually settle every quarter. And now they're putting in place ability to track by the hour. And we've heard from some of the environmental folks when we were negotiating the res legislation a year ago. The environmental community would like to have Vermont go to an hourly tracking of wrecks to prove that you comply with the res, and they would like it to be a wreck has to be tied to power purchase. So you literally have to pair up.
That's the one.
Yeah. So that has a potential to dramatically change the process and increase the cost. Because when you're tracking hourly, it's much harder to
I
balance.
mean, I'm sorry, I'm listening to this and this steam's starting to come out of my ears.
So with the supermajority gone now, the likelihood of that happening has dropped significantly. So there's less a concern there. On the what are power prices going to do side of things, in New England, electric prices, wholesale electric prices, they're very closely tied to natural gas. And the Trump administration coming in has pretty much said they're going to start issuing leases for gas and oil drilling on federal property with intent to drop the price of gasoline by 50% in the first year in office. Even if they don't meet that target, the fact that they have indicated they're going to allow greater drilling has an effect on the futures market for natural gas, which means natural gas prices start to drop, and that in New England at least, that has an effect on making forward electric prices drop. So we're trying to figure out where is that sweet spot where the speculators are factoring in what they think is going to happen to natural gas, get locked in before we see the reality not meeting expectations. There's going to be a bottom to that trough, and we want to make sure we're in the market at that time.
No, I mean, it's good that what concerns me about the bundling is paying a premium for no environmental benefit whatsoever. You know, I mean, I worked close enough for a long time. I'm strongly in favor of solar and clean energy, but it makes no sense to me to doing it in a way that benefits the solar generators at the expense of ratepayers by forcing a premium.
Yeah. And what's gonna happen is that graph, your power supply is gonna have to be much higher than your load, because you're gonna need to make sure you have energy coming in to hit all of the megawatt hours at every specific hour of the day.
And we need a lot of batteries.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And I assume that nukes are out of the picture because.
I tried.
Or you know, or with the new legislature, is there gonna be another push to try and get it counted as, I forget, somebody, they called it green but not renewable.
Clean but not green.
Or clean but not.
Virginia kind of did that, they included nuclear, and they just didn't call it green, they called it clean. And that's how they actually adopted their renewable laws that included nuclear.
So last, this is more of a legislative question. So last year, Heather sat on a committee run by the DPS that was looking at how do they change the standards. She pushed for nuclear there. I was on a legislative committee with the other utilities and environmental groups. The only two people pushing for nuclear were me and Jeff Cram from Global Foundries. We got zero traction and ultimately decided that we needed to protect the other gains we made. So we gave up. Had no interest. Surprisingly, the administration came in after we had reached an agreement and had their own proposal for what they call the clean energy standard, to Scott's point, that included nuclear. I'm told they're going to roll it out again in this legislative session and see what they can do. I'm not expecting very good reception from the Democratic leadership. However, I've had a couple of legislators mention within the last month that there may be a crack as far as the small modular nuclear reactors being
Yes, sir.
let in, but existing nuclear is still dead on arrival.
Is there any small modular?
Not built yet.
I will tell you, when I was working on Vogel, God, it must be 10, 15 years ago, maybe more than that. And they were talking about the modular being the wave of the future. And that it was gonna happen, and it was just around the corner. And, you know, we're 50 miles down the highway from that corner, and it hasn't happened.
It's like fusion, it's just 10 years ago.
I think the opportunity, building on what Ken said, is that more than likely what's gonna happen this session is a lot of windbagging about the clean standard and then nothing. If however, the left decides they wanna do something, it's not going to be the clean heat standard, but that's going to be dead because they can't deal with his override. They can't override veto. So if they decide to become realists at this moment, then I think there's an opportunity to put nuclear back on the table. I think it's highly unlikely that in the first year that anyone's going to be real. You know, between the sting of not getting the clean heat standard as they envisioned it, coupled with 100% of their focus is going to have to be on the education, property tax, and healthcare, which are both going to be disastrous issues. I think there's just not going to be any discussion about energy that's going to be substantive. That's my guess. But if and when that clean heat standard comes back around the bend in some new form, which I don't think will be this year, I think next year the earliest, I think then you've got your opportunity to have the sort of conversations that Ken is alluding to. That's just my read of it.
And our position should have been clear. I mean, Hardwick is not alone on this.
Yeah.
The Webster membership wants a clean energy standard with nuclear as an option. But we don't, the other utilities are not willing to spend any political capital.
Yeah, no, I can understand. Sorry.
No, that's fine. Alright, so the next, any more questions on the graph?
One quickie. I'm looking at the sources. Which one of these? I thought we have nuclear as a big percentage of ours. Which one of these is nuclear?
You do not have any.
Dropped off at some point.
Yeah, that was probably.
That drop off.
It's
Recently?
20, there's a 2022. Nuclear
2022.
ended in 2022.
Really? Okay.
You had, I'll get into this more, but you did have a market contract that ended last year, but it wasn't nuclear.
Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
That's why we sent you the document.
It's teeny on my phone.
So this next slide shows the megawatt hour shortfall per year. And this is, I say approximate cost at forward prices. It's very approximate because it's just applying the around the clock price to your volume, but that's not how we would actually calculate your budget. So just know that it's very much an approximation. It's not a specific it's not as specific as would be in your budget, but so you'll notice that in the approximate cost, it in the next 3 years from 25 to 27, that cost drops. That's because in 2025 you have 0 wall kit. In 2026 you have half a year of wall kit, and then 2027 you have a full year. So your deficit is reduced. And prices are dropping in that time as well. Yeah, I just want to draw your attention to as we talked about already, we are looking at a purchase. Or I should say we're in the process of doing an evaluation. we haven't reached out to any counterparties yet. We don't have final volumes yet. It's just something that is on our radar because it's a quite a gap once 2028 comes around, and that's for the majority of our members. So it's something that we need to be cognizant of, and we want you to know that we are cognizant of it. Questions, comments? So the next slide is a dollar value effect on Walcott not running in 2025. So the first column on the left with dollar values is that's your budget for 2025. That is without Walcott at all. The middle column is your power supply were Walcott to be running. So you'll notice your net resources and load charges and credits drops because you aren't purchasing energy on the ISO markets because Walcott's a behind the meter load reducer. Your transmission charges drop because it doesn't have a huge volume at peak generally, but you know, it is volume, it's gonna drop in peak load. It's, you know, talking about base load units, it's hydro's base load, so it's gonna be running as long as there's water. And then administrative and other charges and credits, that's a small reduction there, and that's because a lot of the smaller ISO charges are based on your ISO settlement load, and again, it reduces your load, reduces the energy that you purchase through the markets. So the total value of Walcott in 2025 that basically that you're losing with the plant being down is about $225,000.
Not counting the rest, which is on.
Correct, yeah, not counting the correct.
So with the rec, what's the value?
So the next slide has the value of recs, and the reason why I broke it out like this is
Yeah,
because
well,
the
it's
power
good to keep it broken out.
doesn't account for the value of tier 1 or tier 2 recs. So I don't know how much you guys follow the renewable energy standard, but Walcott will now qualify for tier 2, which is I say class 1 in here, that's basically class 1 for the other states. Vermont likes to be different, so we name things differently. And the value for class 1 recs right now for 2025 vintage is about $40. It's actually a little bit over $40. So the way that we usually estimate an annual generation is just by taking the 5-year average. So 5-year average for Walcott is almost 3,000 megawatt hours. So the 2025 value was about $116,000.
Would you characterize that as lost opportunity? So I think Hardwick, you've got Midlands Road already in tier 2.
Yeah.
And historically, all the small hydros that have qualified under tier 1. This move to tier 2 happened as part of the new legislation. So there's incremental value to all the small hydro owned by municipalities. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in Hardwick's case, because you have billings, this would be excess that you normally bank or sell to the other reps and members.
Yeah, so it still has the value.
Yep. So if I do the math, Roger, I come up with total 344,000 between the two.
Great. So I think all of us should burn that into our minds as we look at what it's going to take in the way of investment to bring it back online.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's a single year.
Yep. Oh yeah. So it means we can spend a lot of money and still come out ahead.
So the last page that I have here, just on your power supply, is just a summary of the causes, the increases and decreases in your budget. So reasons why your budget is higher is the Walkett outage, which we've already covered all of that. I mentioned the 2019 planned purchase, which was the market contract that expired in 2024. This was a very inexpensive resource. It was replaced with Brookfield, which increased quite a bit. That being said, Brookfield is still a very inexpensive resource comparatively. So Brookfield is a little bit more expensive, but it's not bad at all. And your transmission rate, the transmission rate for ISO wind increased by 20% from 2024, and it is set to increase substantially within the next 5 years. So you'll see that as you look at your budget, that transmission is going to increase quite a bit next 5 years as well.
Because congestion or because Transco's making the investments or both?
I think a big portion of it is wind. Yeah, offshore wind is a huge reason for the income side. You have any other insights?
Yeah, well, that makes
Well, the
sense.
funding for offshore, the big driver right now is what they call asset condition projects. So that's all the transmission that was built back in the 60s. It's coming up to be replaced. And you're finding National Grid, Eversource, those guys are all taking the opportunity to gold plate what they're putting in. And there's a huge fight at ISO right now as to what can be included and what can't be included. But we're talking like $7 billion of those asset condition projects being proposed. So the next few years, that's gonna be the main driver, along with some of the prep work for the offshore wind that's coming in.
So things that decreased your budget were changes in the number capacity rate, a 40% reduction in the Stetson wind volume. And Stetson, as I said, is a fairly expensive resource. Now, I should say Stetson entitlement, because it is an intermittent resource. So maybe they have an amazing year and you end up getting the same volume that you were ended up getting in 2024, but your entitlement is reduced. And the biggest decreaser is no more GMP transmission costs. That was, I think, around 3 that's numbers.
You landed in about overall there, right? 3.
What was that?
Where did we land percentage wise? I mean, you've got a few, I
Um,
think it was like 3 or something.
Yes, it
Ish.
it was 5.9.
Overall.
The other final change.
Yep. Okay.
So questions about that? So with regard to a battery, it's, I don't have a specific analysis for Hardwick. But I have an analysis for a 2 megawatt battery. And the value, the net present value at a reasonable assumptions is about 1.7 million. And so you can assume that with a higher peak load, Hardwick would probably put in a battery that's, at least 3 megawatts, probably 4. So the value of that would be, yeah, you'd see that increase proportionally. And as we said, transmission costs are only increasing. So it's definitely something that we are encouraging our members to.
And WEPSA has a series of pre-qualified vendors, correct? That you went out to bid for, but.
Yeah, we have, 3, I would say 3 so far that we've really been working with, although we have been in communication with others also.
I know to your west, I mean, we had one site that crapped out, we just found another site in Morrisville. So, you know, and we currently have an agreement, we'll have to modify the new site. And we're not gonna own it ourselves, because we decided it was better to let them own it and figure out how to manage the dang thing. But we ran it through, NAPSA ran it through a 10,000, cycle Monte Carlo analysis, and I forget, it's like $2.7 million in net benefit, and all 10,000 scenarios, we came out positive. We didn't have
That's
any.
pretty robust.
Yeah, so sure, could we only win by 300,000, or could we win by 4 million? Sure, but the point was, you're gonna win.
I mean, the discussions that we had which were very preliminary a few years ago. I'm not sure if Roger, Mike, you remember how long ago it was, and that was with, was that with DeLorean?
Yeah.
Yeah,
The late shift they
it
come.
was Glenn Davis's outfit.
Yep.
I don't know if they're on the list or not.
They have a new name, but they're on the list. You probably, what we found in Morrisville is you're gonna probably wanna site it on the transmission line, just because, it can accept the power and feed it into the market, and that's totally fine for you. It does all the good things you want it to do, because you're metered at both ends. So to the grid outside, it looks like your load just disappeared. Tell me if I've got that wrong, but
Yeah, that sounds
essentially, so it works fine. We're gonna set ours up in Morrisville with where you need to someday have a way to flip switches and microgrid Morrisville Village, should that ever become necessary when ISO finally gets to the point where they're doing blackouts like California, and ISO is already threatening that, and trying to create a service hub area where we could flip enough switches to use that in our hydro and our solar to keep a hub running. We're not gonna build it at the beginning, but the inverter costs like 50 grand more that would support islanding, and we're gonna pay that, you decide to pay that. So there's a lot of, the point of saying all that is not what your neighbor's doing, but there's a lot of options to think about in there once you're working with a vendor, and these guys are great at helping with that.
And we've got 3, I think Morrisville's working with Encore.
Yep.
Encore Renewables, who did your solar projects. Light Shift, which is the old DeLorean, we're working with them in Linden and Ludlow.
Kearsarge.
I think
Oh, okay.
Light Shift had another project, which is basically on where they were, it's 2 or 3 we're working on with them. And then Kearsarge Energy, working on solar and battery combined with Barton and Orleans. So 3 vendors that we have in process.
Presumably, we would put out some kind of an RFP, and see what we get back in proposals from all of them.
And there'll be others, I get called every couple of weeks with another vendor that wants to get involved. NextEra, which is huge, I mean, they're trying to get into the market up here too, so. An RFP, you'd get a lot of responses. The trick is really trying to identify location wise, where you want to put it.
Now, does the transmission line run, well, it does run by Billings Road? Or not?
I don't really know.
It doesn't.
Right.
Cause there had been some discussion of citing something.
There's a certain distance at which economically you can run and tag it over to a transmission line. It's not many miles.
Yeah.
But there's within a reasonable distance, if you're not too far from where you want to be, you can afford to make that work. You're gonna net a little bit less, and your Monte Carlo's analysis is probably gonna have some losers of 10,000 and, right?
Yeah, with your interconnection costs.
So that's the key.
So it's a case of really a sending issue.
This one that was set up, as you mentioned, Billings Road, the upgrade of power line from there into the center, and the prediction was to increase wire size all the way back to Hardwick. So in perspective, battery.
Yeah, we can look at all that, of course, and Matt Dunlos is really good with this PLM, who we've hired to work with you here now. Matt's great at kind of being the system engineer from the utility side and works great with all these solar developers. Every time we meet with one, we have him on the call with us. And he helps a lot on that side to help advise where to go. We basically did a pre-screen ourselves and shared 8 new sites, so we knew where we wanted it, so rather than have Encore run around and find a site that didn't work, we said, here's 8 hotels, which is the best.
Yeah, well, I think what
That's how we did it.
what you're suggesting too, if you wanted to use it as a reliability tool. Yeah, taking a look at your system.
Yep.
So, yeah.
And that helps us a lot, that was the point, and he knows your system, so. I mean, he and Brian, you could get to viable sites in a heartbeat. Probably just got to help too.
Else it hasn't been decided.
Yeah, so I think the next step on this is, is if this is something of interest, then you'll just need to re-engage. I know at one point you were engaged through VEPSA on this and it kind of went fallow. So I think part of having them come into this conversation, some of you had expressed that you'd like to start that dialogue. And so it's really starting the wheels turning again to have that conversation.
So, as you said, it has the potential to reduce our transmission costs tremendously. Yeah. Plus the other benefits of load management and everything else.
And there's just not another game in town right now. I personally think lithium-ion batteries are going to be a failed technology that we wish we didn't impose on society. But in 2024, we don't have another choice. It's the way to cope with all the variable intermittent sources that we have. So I think we gotta do what is available, keep prices down, manage the system well, and know that in 10 or 15 years, we're gonna replace it with something else. I don't know what that is. But
You'll be retired, so you don't have to worry.
I sure will, you'll be down. You'll be like, hey, Heather, how's it going? I don't
Lots
wanna
of
know.
things are coming down. I
Yeah.
remember when flywheels were a big thing.
So.
Put a story elevator out of concrete, that's the solution. I'm gonna build them in Texas, China.
I asked Encore about if we could set up in the contract to have a renewal with our energy services contract at the end of 20 years. And he said, you won't want to do that because we'll have to recapitalize it with a new technology by then. And I said, well, actually, you're right. So let's not bother.
Yeah, so if the desire is to put an RFP together and get an interest, and you'll get the 3 that we work with, and I'm sure you'll get 5 or 6 others that wanna reach out and start a conversation, so.
I know NextEra is chasing around Vermont hard. I'm sure they've called you, so they'll be eager.
Yeah, they responded to the last.
Yeah.
They actually, when we ended up partnering with Lightshift, NextEra was actually the second choice.
Yeah.
We were concerned about having the multi-billion-dollar gorilla come in at that time, because
Yeah.
it had the potential to take over the whole market, so we wanted a smaller player. I think now people are getting more comfortable with technology, and NextEra's got a lighter touch than they used to have. So they could be an option.
They're chasing hard. Okay, well, we can engage on all that. So it'd be something you'll pick up, Sarah, yay.
Michael, Roger, any questions on your end?
No,
Just
I'm
one
glad we got a
observation.
path forward on it, because it seems like it needs to be part of our mix.
Yep.
And Michael, you'll appreciate this, some of the value comes from arbitrage.
But I have one concern. I know we talked earlier, hey, gas and oil are gonna be cheaper, so the cost of electricity is gonna be cheaper. That's great in terms of the cost, but that doesn't increase the amount of capacity that's available to get power from. And my biggest concern is somebody around the corner in New Hampshire says, hey, I'm building an AI center, I'm buying up all the available power. And all of a sudden, yeah, power's cheap, but there's none available because somebody's already made a deal to use it all. How do we protect ourselves against running out of a power source? So if we do a short-term deal, who knows what's going to happen 2-3 years from now when some big AI component comes in around this part of the country and starts sucking up all the power. Plus everybody trying to electrify, it just makes it even worse.
that's part of ISO's job is to look at, you know, they make 10-year projections on what the load is gonna be. I think it's 10-year projections on what the load is gonna be. And that's part of the capacity market, or that is the capacity market, to make sure that we have enough resources to serve the load. And Ken's talked to me several times about how these data centers are, and I believe you mentioned it earlier today, how they are trying to get small nuclear started. So basically they'd be co-located with the AI center, these small nuclear plants.
Well, I have a big picture of that setting in Vermont.
In New England, I mean, I was at a transmission meeting, actually with NextEra's transmission arm up in Colorado about a month ago, and AI was one of the main topics. They're looking for places where they've got greenfield to build new generation combined with the AI data center, combined with the transmission line. And they're looking for like 5-cent power, which they can't really get anywhere in New England. Ended up having breakfast with NextEra's AI marketing person. And just comparing notes. Put it in context, Vermont's entire peak load is about 800 megawatts right now. It used to be 1.2 gigawatts, but with the solar, we're down ran ahead. One of the data centers, one of these AI data centers is a gigawatt. So
No
one data
kidding.
center bigger than the state of Vermont's load.
Holy cow, yeah, you do need a nuclear plant. That is incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if something like that were to be discussed, I think
That's not small.
it's a whole, it'll involve the whole region, and honestly, the only way to protect yourself against something like that is if you build your own generator or you're willing to sign a 20-year contract, which brings it a whole other list of risks.
But again, as a mix, and this is what I was talking about staggering. It seems to me that a prudent course may be to have a mix of longer term, you know, maybe some 20, well, we have Billings Road, but you know, but something more base loadish. That's 20 years, and we have something else that's 10 and something else that's 5, and then some, you know, some shorter term things. And yes, that may cost somewhat more than staying on a shorter horizon where you can game the market more precisely. But you've got to hedge against the kind of thing that Michael's talking about.
It's not so, the 5 year, I just want to be clear on the 5 years isn't so much market. Trying to game the market. It's, you know, we've routinely done a 5-year deal and then a couple years later do another 5-year deal and do almost dollar cost averaging type of approach. The issue you run into when you go beyond 5 years is any long-term contract in Vermont requires a certificate of public good from the Public Utility Commission. And that makes it hugely problematic because it's an 18-month process. You got to pay your attorneys, you got to file testimony. So you've got upwards of $100,000 in cost to get that approval. And it's very hard to get a third party to hold their price when you have to go through that time, unless they're building a new generator and have to get a certificate themselves.
But that's what I was thinking is in terms of new generation.
Yeah, if we're talking about solar and stuff like
If you're
that.
talking about existing capacity, then yeah, why would somebody do that?
Right.
But for new generation, they've got to get the certificate anyway.
I think we need to make one law, change the law we need to make, honestly, in my view, is, you know, all we have to do is add small scale hydros and 10 use smaller quality standards, and we could have more local hydro, which is basically not intermittent variable. And that's how other states do it. Like, if you can't do hydro in Vermont, Other states have made hydro like recreational kayaking and canoeing and intended use in water quality standards, and we said no. Or we could just admit that ISO is not very good at their job and try to form a new ISO with Hydro-Quebec and just get the hell out. Which I've always thought would be great for Vermont. And HQ would love it. Wouldn't be very popular in Vermont, and
I don't know,
but
in the current political environment, it might be a first step.
I don't deal with ISO normal like Heather does, but and she may not agree with what I'm about to say, but I've said to you all, like, I just think they've been in that for a really long time. They've not seen coming what's been coming for a really long time. Their plans have lagged way behind, which might be why I actually think there's some risk of brownouts and not having enough energy, because they just haven't done their job right. They spent a decade not believing the states meant the laws that they passed about the transition to renewables. And now they're trying to play catch up, which is why you get 20% transition across the board and threats of brownouts because they just didn't do their job. And yet somehow nobody's lost their job. All their leadership is still there. So. And their cost sharing agreement sure doesn't benefit Vermont. Okay, 4% of every project in the England. Guess which states have most of the projects? It's not Vermont. So other states pay 96% of ours. You add it all together, that means we're in that loser. Most, I've just never been a fan, so sorry, I could help myself a bit. But I really, I think we have to break the system, honestly, but that's not for Hardwick Electric team. We don't have the authority. If somebody made the energy czar for New England, that's what I would do. Break the system. I would want to be a czar.
Unfortunately, it's FERC's, ISOs are FERC's baby, and to get
I know,
FERC to change.
I know, sorry for the rant.
You're not wrong. I don't know many jobs where you can make over $1 million and not have any exposure to loss. Not be responsible for anything.
You get it wrong most of the time.
With regard to a purchase, that's something that you would approve, so.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no,
Yeah,
we've done
so-
it in the
yeah.
past,
So if you have something specific that you want, then we will do our best to work through that process. If you, it's probably not something, a longer term purchase isn't most likely gonna be something that we're gonna do, for the majority of the members in this instance, but if that's something that Hardwick wants to do, then that's something that we would explore and see what.
There was at one time also some discussion about expansion at Bones Road.
You add more, if you add more solar, you need to really be moving on battery.
Yeah.
At some point.
Yeah.
Oh,
You
yeah,
won't just have intermittent variable, you'll have voltage issues all over the system.
right,
So just to say that out loud, right? I haven't learned all the numbers specifically, but the various reasonable size systems that you have here, in addition to the fact we have a heavy population of net meter systems here. In addition to quite a few fairly big systems, we have a high proportion of solar on the system. At least that, I believe that anecdotally, I have not studied it to the level I should, but adding a whole lot more solar, you'll have trouble in a heartbeat, I think.
Yeah, it's squirrely if you get solar above like 40% of the load on the circuit, then they start to worry about voltage issues.
So something to keep in mind when it gets close. Not that you shouldn't do it, it has to
yeah,
be done.
no,
That's all.
Listen, I have to say goodbye. I had a hard stop at 7. It's now 7:42. That was my stop. I got to run, but this was incredibly helpful. Heather, it's right. Your name was Heather?
Before you go, Mike,
Yes.
Because there's an item coming up on the agenda in terms of personnel policy, and we're gonna need two commissioners to work with Beth on that.
Okay, you looking for volunteers?
Yeah, yeah. I just hope this our volunteer pool.
You get the volunteer if you leave early? I'm happy to help.
That's- Seems like
That
a fair
Oklahoma connection,
punishment.
I can't pass it up. I only have one complaint. There's a strange guy goes up and down my road every day. I think HED should look into it. I have
Wait
to
once
run.
in a
Beth,
while.
Beth, give me a call and we'll get together.
Will do.
All right,
Thank
thanks,
you.
guys. Talk to you later.
Fred's
Happy
Rogers song.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Yes, you too.
Okay, so the next,
What's that?
yeah, does anyone have anything else for Heather?
That was great.
This was terrific, thank you.
How do I get off here?
And the next item on the agenda is discussion of personnel policy review.
I believe it's a capital one.
Oh, capital, oh, sorry, I dropped, yes.
And this is just, we don't have any action tonight, we just wanted to give you an update, Beth will go through the numbers, but. You know, when I first came here, we said we got roofs to fix and a building to fix and this to do and that to do, so. And now the projects are all coming to an end, and so now we need to capitalize them, so we're planning next meeting. To bring you a note to capitalize, let's turn those into a note, and so Beth wanted to give you a heads up on what that number might look like.
It's probably gonna be about 250,000. The roofs alone were 100,000. And we are running into several situations at the office here where several items are having to be brought up. Things we had not, that were not originally planned for, that our contractors find, so we're anticipating maybe 150, much as 150,000 on the building here. Two other expenditures that are coming up are for new general manager car and office furniture. I'm proposing that not be part of the actual capital loan because those will depreciate much more quickly than a full-fledged loan will. So we will look for maybe some alternate financing if necessary for those things. But they would not be part of the actual capital loan.
So Beth's gonna start getting quotes and getting things lined up, and hopefully by the time we get to the next meeting, we'll actually have more firm numbers. We're very much estimating because the contractor's definitely in all the mess right now, but you know, they haven't quite finished finding the mess, including some of the stuff that was put in as the start of the project. All the stuff that was done has been torn out because it just didn't go. Unfortunately, we thought we were just gonna finish, but nothing was done to code, so it's all being ripped out. So unfortunate, so, but once you bring that trade in, you can't tell them to go on top of something that doesn't cut. None of their own professional license, so we're having to backtrack to where they're allowed to stop track.
Now, it's a capital loan, is this something that we're gonna need to go, we need to go to a vote or to the select board?
To the side.
So
To the select board, so my understanding is select board, but I will verify all that with the client.
Yeah.
Okay,
Bring the papers to
just so that we're,
That's what we think, we gotta verify that, that's our current thing, so just wanted to give you a heads up on that.
okay,
Good news is the projects are all moving fast. You know, and some of the construction will be done in a couple of days.
It's nice to see.
The trade, the plumber and the electrician have already been in, and started work on the interior stuff, so it's all moving quick. So.
okay. Next item.
Yes.
Personnel policy review. That's thank you for doing heavy lifting on.
An initial stab at it.
You know, I mean, I have not read through, and I guess, so what you're proposing is that you work with two commissioners to come up with a proposal for the commission, and what I would ask is all of us, including people who are not in that group, take a look through the policy, and if we see things, to pass that on
Okay.
to you, so that that can be
Absolutely.
discussed, and if it makes sense, incorporated into.
And there's no time frame that it has to be done by next month or.
No,
But I would like it in place by the time we start negotiating the contract, the union contract, because they do pull some of this verbiage and include it in the union contract.
makes sense, makes sense. So do we have a second volunteer?
I said Mike said.
Okay, but Beth was looking for two people.
Who else?
Well, you,
He's
okay,
doing
you're doing Jackson Dam. Miles, did you? Okay,
Thank you. This is an ad hoc committee, I don't think you need to vote or anything.
no,
It's not a meeting of the commission, it's coming to you.
See you there.
Thank you.
Okay, hang on. I have that part of it. Let's see if I have time. You want-
so the next item on the agenda is general manager's report. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to.
One thing I really wanted to highlight for you, just because last time, you asked me to approach a couple of your members about the Jackson Dam, and as you just said, we don't agree, Mike was too busy, we don't agree, and so he's already engaged with them, so. We did just get a study, an analysis that we didn't even know the state did, they came and did an inspection in May, right before the second flood. We just got that report, not shoppers is rated 4. So I already sent that to send on to the whole committee. No reason for us to hold on, I'm not trying to hide anything, so we'll at least be able to see what the state saw and just inspect. So that'll be something you'll get to see on that, so. The only other thing I'd say, Beth and I just talked about today is our current plan for December is to review our first draft of the budget. So you can get going on that, vote, it just be we won't have final details by then. But Beth says she'll have a solid draft for you to look at it, and the importance of moving that, I know that sometimes you've done that different times of the year. But in addition, this year, we know you're gonna need a rate case next year, that's why I put what's going on with the rate cases across the state right now, to give you a sense of what is likely. And what we told VEPS is we wanted to use the 2024 as a base year, but then you use known measurables out of the 2025 budget. So your salary, your payroll increases don't go back to 24, you use your 2025 budget. All other known and measurable things that are your financials from 24 coupled with increases that are quote unquote known and measurable is how it's done. So she's trying to target to have this all done with VEPSA in March or April, because that's when the financials will get finalized in March. And then, so we want to make sure that the budget's long out of the way long before that. Plus it's good form to start the budget, but probably you won't have adopted it before, but then hopefully in the January meeting, we'll have a final budget. So that's what we're trying to do.
That sounds good, that timing, because I think it'll also give us some resolve and determination if we see how big a hole we have, how difficult a year we will have without a rate increase. So
right.
I really applaud that. It forces us to really push it along though. And the timing's good because then Sarah can really own it with, which is not always, it's actually a good time of year, Sarah, for you to be coming on board. So you'll have a budget for next year that you're familiar with and feel like you can own.
Yep. So other than that, I can answer questions if there's anything on the other road.
That's great.
Are there any questions? Are there, anybody else? Not? Any questions on the financial report? Okay, the only other business idea that popped into my head and also thinking about transition is, we're gonna have a Christmas party this year.
We usually have one.
We have had, but we hadn't had one in a while. I don't remember how long it's been.
Yeah, you know, that'd be a great thing to just quietly, maybe between you and Beth, see how people feel about it. You know, because we really, I think we do it for the employees, not to entertain ourselves. So, you know, how do people feel about it? Is it something they miss and they'd feel better about working at Hardwick Electric if we had one? Or are they ambivalent, or are they negative? It's a small enough population of employees where it feels like you and Beth could.
Yeah, just thinking that we're all the new people and everything, and it might be,
We can ask around, like I said
but if
earlier.
people aren't interested, then it doesn't
We have
matter.
Yeah, it was an annual thing. It was only COVID that led to its stop.
We have an all staff meeting on Friday. We've instituted those once a month, so we can have a discussion with them and ask them all to.
Yeah.
Not a group you have to ask to be blunt. So they'll be fine telling us their truth, right, Beth?
Don't think so.
There's not a lot of shrinking violence. So,
Yeah, and you know, they might come back and say, you know, we're all busy flat out in the holiday period. Let's do something in the summer. Let's do a picnic. That's the kind of feedback we need, because both of those things have sort of lapsed.
Sure. You know, we'll
Used to
ask
be-
about. I didn't know there was a tradition, so it had never occurred to me.
Yeah, no, and I probably think about, and everything is just calm down. The best, as it always does.
Yeah. Oh, it's wonderful. We'll ask around on Friday. We can do that.
And I think, I don't know if it came up a lot with Sarah or not when we were doing the interviews, but here we are all together, and it was just a subset of us when we interviewed her. But, you know, we were embarrassed as a board, I think, finding the condition of the offices, and then also the condition, you know, of some of the facilities we have. And I think Scott's made some great strides in remedying some of those gaps. Some of the other things will take longer, but, you know, I think, and others on here, correct me if I'm overstating this, but we really do feel that I didn't reflect how we felt last year. It really reflected that we just didn't fully appreciate and understand the state of things. And now we do. And I think we're really feeling much better with what Scott's doing. So, you know, you're stepping into something, Sarah, where there's a lot of change underway, and it won't be complete. And you'll have to sort of pick up where Scott's left off, and Beth can sort of tune you in on it. But I think as a board, we were embarrassed, and we're really supportive of getting things shipshape. Is that fair, Lynn?
So, I think it's a good summary.
I think the big project is gonna be, you know, we're gonna have patched it all up and changed the course of it. But in all honesty, you can't have a critical emergency service operation whose equipment and buildings are located in the floodplain. That facility's gotta go.
Yeah, no, it has to,
You're gonna need a new facility, and my strong recommendation, because I enjoy this benefit in Morrisville, is when you do that, you should make it big enough to put the office in it.
exactly.
Part of the reason I'm so fastidious about spending the extra money to get this code is then you'll actually have a saleable asset. And without a bunch of code violations. So that's something I would encourage you all and Sarah to be thinking about. I've already talked to OP, there's not really room at the facility they're building. And he originally thought there would be, but Mike had been looking at some properties around the community already thinking about this, so it's not like we're starting at zero. I don't know, yet, there is a list, Brian knows them.
And it's good for Opie. It's good for Opie and Eric to know.
Yep.
You know, that we're thinking, because they see the possibilities much more readily than we do.
So I think that's your future at some point.
Yeah, no, I think it makes sense that it all be in one place, and that's
Yeah, something to think about in the future.
I'm gonna get it back. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
You do adjourn.
Second.
Any opposition? Hearing none, we are adjourned at 8:57. No, 7:57.
Hey, we got.